فكلي واشربي وقري عينا فإما ترين من البشر أحدا فقولي إني نذرت للرحمن صوما.
Hey everyone, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Islamic Mary podcast. So for today, I want to speak about an event I spoke at a couple of weeks ago on Nostra Aetate. And I had the opportunity to speak at Georgetown University, the university which I graduated from. I have 3 degrees from Georgetown, my undergrad, my master's, my PhD. I did undergrad in international relations, then I did a master's in Arab studies, and then finished off with a PhD in Arabic and Islamic studies. So it was great to go back. And it was an event on the 60th anniversary of the groundbreaking Catholic document, Nostra Aetate. In particular, I was on a panel on Christian-Muslim relations. So as many of you know, Nostra Aetate is this remarkable document composed by the Catholic Church in the mid-20th century after World War II. And it primarily deals with Jewish and Christian relations. But there is an important section on Christian-Muslim relations, which I was asked to speak about and comment on. And I found that the document continues to be relevant in various ways. So first, let me go ahead and read what Nostra Aetate speaks about Christians and Muslims, and then give a small commentary of how I see it continue to be relevant. So the church regards with esteem also the Muslims. They adore the one God who is living and subsisting in himself, merciful and all-powerful, the creator of the heaven and the earth, who has spoken to humanity. They strive to submit wholeheartedly even to his inscrutable decrees, just as Abraham, with whom the faith of Islam is gladly linked, submitted to God. Though they do not acknowledge Jesus as God, they revere him as a prophet. They also honor Mary, his virgin mother. At times they even call on her with devotion. Moreover, they look forward to the day of judgment when God will reward all those raised up. For this reason, they value the moral life and worship God, especially through prayer, almsgiving, and fasting. In the course of the centuries, there have been indeed arisen not a few quarrels and hostilities between Christians and Muslims. But now the sacred synod pleads with all to forget the past, to make sincere efforts for mutual understanding, and so to work together for the preservation and fostering of social justice, moral welfare, and peace and freedom for all humankind. So this is the 2 paragraphs in Nostra Aetate that speaks about Christian-Muslim relations. And here I want to speak about 3 different points. So first, the document does not simply see Muslims as the other. And this is crucial because in Islamophobia, especially in modern times, there is this idea that Muslims are the other. They are the exact opposite of Christians and Jews. They worship a different God. They have a different moral and ethical code. They implement the Sharia. So if we think of the West as being progressive and advancing women's rights and pluralistic, then the East and Islam is stuck in tradition, it is oppressive, it is not diverse, and it subverts women and minorities. But here it's clear that the Christian authors, the Catholics, they saw the Muslims as similar to them. And they do this by identifying shared figures. So they mention here Jesus, Mary, Maryam, and Ibrahim. And it understands that there may be different theological difference regarding them. And they make a special note regarding Jesus. Jesus is understood to be God or part of the Trinity in Christianity, but is seen as a prophet in Islam. But the focus is on the commonality and how they're found in each religion. So these are figures that many of us have heard of, and they unite the different religious traditions. And as you know, I've written a book on the Islamic Mary, and I do think Maryam, even more than Jesus, can be a potential bridge figure because she's understood to be human, a virgin mother, and someone who brings Jesus into the earth. And when we look at other figures such as Jesus, Isa, there is key theological differences between Christianity and Islam regarding Jesus. And Abraham, yes, of course, Abraham is shared as well, but he's understood differently. Abraham is the patriarch. He brings and starts the children of Israel, where in Islam, he's more understood to be a Semitic, part of the Hunafa, or those who implement monotheism. A second point where I identify with this document is that it sees Muslims as spiritual beings. And this is relevant because in Islamophobia, we see that Muslims are seen as a political threat. They are trying to undermine the West. They are, once again, trying to implement Sharia law. They are all about power, trying to take over the system. And here we see the idea of spirituality and religion emerge. So it mentions here that Muslims adore the one God. So there's this emphasis on monotheism and worshiping one God who is living and subsisting in himself, merciful and all-powerful. So these are words that are often used in the Quran. Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, Ar-Rahim, the most gracious, and the all-powerful. He's Al-Qawi Al-Aziz. He's the all-powerful, he's the almighty, and the creator of the heaven and the earth. خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. So in this section, we see some key overlap between Christian and Muslim language on God. So here, Muslims are praised to be worshiping God, worshiping the one, and also having a relationship with the divine. And it continues and says, who value the moral life and worship God, especially through prayer, almsgiving, and fasting. So this is also exceptional in the sense that there is this idea that Christians and Muslims have ethics, they have morality, that morality is connected to spirituality, is connected to divine, the transcendent. And then it specifically mentions how, through prayer, almsgiving, and fasting. So Muslims, like Christians, pray. Muslims pray 5 times a day. Christians also pray throughout the week, and in particular for Catholics and Mass on Sunday prayer service, almsgiving. So there's a sense of giving to the poor, helping your community. Wealth is not only for yourself, it's not only to be hoarded, but to be given, and people should be generous. And then also the idea of fasting. So the idea of abstaining from certain things, whether that be in Lent or in Ramadan, for gaining greater spiritual benefit. So fasting is a way to temporarily remove something for the hope that you will receive greater blessings and spirituality in the future. And then, like Christians, Muslims believe in moral and ethical values, pray and adore God, and give back to the community through alms and charity. So this was something unique that I saw in this document, as that Muslims and Christians overlap in these things. That you might have 2 different people and they may share certain morality and ethics, but one may be religious and spiritual and pray and the other not, right? So here there's this idea that ethics is connected to worship, and that worship is connected to giving back to your community. And lastly, I see this remarkable emphasis on social justice. So after the document speaks about this idea of commonality in terms of God, in terms of shared figures, it ends with a very powerful note. And the document does not only see Muslims as religious and spiritual beings, but as partners in the social and common good. It ends by stating Christians and Muslims should work together for the preservation and fostering of social justice, moral welfare, and peace and freedom for all of humankind. Christians and Muslims should not only develop their own communities, but work together on global projects for the benefit of humanity. So what I love about this last section and how it ends is that it's not only about seeking justice within Muslim communities or within Christian ones, or it's not only being moral and ethical within your specific religious identity, but it's about the global. It's about the world. And this is essential because even in Islamic discourse, you have the idea of, Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Kufr, that there is this abode of Islam and there's this abode of disbelief, and that in the abode of belief, you should act morally and ethically. But if you go to the abode of disbelief, then you are permitted to not always act in a moral and ethical way. So here, there is this emphasis that Christians and Muslims could be partners. They could actually work together on social justice projects such as zero hunger or climate action or issues in Palestine and around the world. So the document speaks to me as I recently wrote the book, The Islamic Mary, Maryam Through the Centuries. And the book sheds more light on Maryam, a figure who is frequently discussed in the Islamic tradition, but not always given the attention that she deserves. So in my view, I see Maryam in the same light as Abraham or Moses, that she is one of the major figures in the Quran, just like Joseph, Yusuf, and Isa and Jesus. And the book focuses on the Islamic Mary and how she's understood in the Islamic tradition. It also speaks at the end about how she is used as a bridge figure between Christianity and Islam. I made a special emphasis to talk about how she's understood in Christianity and Islam and how she is referenced in these various interfaith and interreligious documents. And the document also highlights the importance of social justice and moral welfare. In a world fraught with conflict, crisis, and despair, we have to ask ourselves the questions: how can Christians and Muslims work together to address some of the world's most pressing problems? How can Christians and Muslims work together on issues related to poverty, hunger, climate change? And how can they work together on Gaza, peace in the Holy Land, and Sudan, among other issues? So this document, even though it was written in the 20th century after World War II, is still relevant today and is inspiring. It's an important start, but really it's essential for modern people to live out its legacy. And in many ways, this document was ahead of its time. We see, especially after 9/11, this rebirth of Islamophobia and Islamophobic tropes. But this document was trying to build bridges in terms of spirituality, shared figures, and global and social projects. So to conclude, I really find this document to be inspiring and as a potential way for Christians and Muslims to imagine a better world. We have to think about shared figures. That could be from the scripture, as discussed with Maryam, with Isa, Jesus, Abraham, Moses, Musa, but it also could be shared figures today, right? What figures are there in our contemporary discourse that could be shared between Christians and Muslims? Could Muslims, for instance, look at Martin Luther King and find some inspiration of ways how he worked with nonviolence and referenced scripture and talked about hope and peace? And how could Christians look at figures like Malcolm X and say that he is important and relevant in terms of social justice, speaking truth to power, building and developing your own community? So there are these shared figures that are even relevant today. Also, this idea of spiritual beings. And in my book, I speak about spirituality and how there are places in the world, such as the Virgin Mary House in Turkey, where Christians and Muslims go there. There are different rooms and there are different worship services, but both of them find a shared spirituality in Mary and Maryam. So Christians and Muslims are different. They have different theological beliefs, but there could be moments where they share spirituality and even certain religious practices, such as alms and giving to the poor. And then lastly, this idea of social justice. And a lot of times when we think about interreligious studies and interfaith, it usually goes to the theological, how this religion is different than this, how this figure is different than that. But I would like to see interfaith, interreligious work going more in the social justice. Yes, there are different theological views, but there are also a lot of shared values in terms of morality and ethics. So how can people of difference, people with different religious practices come together and say, this is important for us. We're going to develop a food bank, or we're going to send aid to the people of Palestine, of Gaza, that we're going to work for peace in Sudan, right? So even though we come from different backgrounds and different creeds and theological views, we can still build coalitions and partnerships to make the world a better place. So thanks so much for listening to the Islamic Mary podcast. You're welcome to order my book, which just came out. It's been over a month that the book has been published. I already got one review. Thanks so much to the anonymous reviewer. Also, you're welcome to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your friends, students, and colleagues. Since the book has been published, I've seen more people engage the podcast and share it with their networks. You're also welcome to review this podcast. It helps other people learn about it, encourages them to listen to it. And you're welcome to visit my website where you can see my research, my blogs, and my various resources related to the book. And you could join my newsletter where you can be updated on the publication of the Islamic Mary and the subsequent programs and events related to it. Thanks once again, and take care.